Our next speaker for this afternoon is Shahrzad Dowlatshahi, and she is the Chief Diplomacy and Protocol Officer, Head of Global Engagement and at the Global Engagement Office. And she's also part of the Economic Development City of San Antonio in America. I will say Sherry, which I would prefer to call her, serves as the Chief Diplomacy and Protocol Officer for the city of San Antonio, heading up the Global Engagement Office from within the Economic Development Department. She oversees international business, protocol, and official global relationships and the Casa San Antonio, which is San Antonio's Trade and Foreign Office in Mexico. More specifically, she assists and supports San Antonio elected officials and executives on matters of international affairs, public diplomacy and diplomatic procedure, as well as protocol. She is responsible for coordinating official foreign travel of mayor and council, as well as planning the program and visits of high-level foreign dignitaries, consular and diplomatic corps members, working closely with mayor and council and public engagement with local community businesses, cultural, civic, and higher education, higher education, diaspora, and ethnic groups. Sherry also has been recognized with Spain's King Felipe the Sixth in Order of Civil Merit, with the rank of officers across, as well as the government of Mexico's prestigious Otili Award, among others. She currently serves on the Board of Trustees of the World Affairs Council of San Antonio and the San Antonio Mexico Friendship Council, as well as the San Antonio Mexico Foundation for Education. She serves as the Global Advisory Council of Musical Bridges around the world, is an advisory member of the U.S.-Mexico Business Association, AEM, as well as San Antonio chapter of the Anuta SA San Antonio City of Gastronomy Advisory Council, and many more. I've just end here and welcome you, Sherry, who will be speaking on the topic managing high-level meetings and diplomatic procedures. Sherry, you have the stage now. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
So thank you for the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy for this invitation to speak. My name is, and yes, you pronounced it correctly, Shahrzad Dowlatshahi, but they call me Sherry. It's much easier for everyone to say Sherry. And it is a privilege for me to lead our international relations and global engagement at the city of San Antonio in Texas, in my role as the Chief Diplomacy and Protocol Officer. Now, but to kind of, I know that we have people from all over the world who are connected today. So I always like to say, when I say city of San Antonio, here, the city refers to the municipality. And so I work at the local government level. I work at the municipal level. And most of my experience has been focused on supporting the mayor of my city, primarily with his or her international engagements. I've been there for 12 years. And today I'm going to talk to you about managing high-level meetings and diplomatic procedure from a protocol perspective. But, and this is important for me to state, is that I am aware that there are all kinds of protocol professionals in the audience. So there will be people who are working at the national level with the national governments in their protocol offices. But there's also going to be people like myself who work at the local government level. There's going to be people who potentially work at universities, or they even work in the corporate world. Protocol is important in all those settings. And when we're talking about high level meetings, for instance, it matters how you do things in all of those contexts. So today, we're going to delve a little bit into the world of high level diplomacy and the critical role that protocol plays in shaping international relations. Again, much of what I am going to share, I want you, if you're not in kind of that diplomatic, high level diplomatic setting, you will be able to hopefully exert what you feel is going to translate into your context. And that is important. High level meetings are pivotal moments in international diplomacy, and they bring together different people, be heads of states, diplomats, key decision makers, and they address critical global issues, negotiate agreements, or just build relationships. Again, I want to stress, if you are working in a university and you are in the Office of Ceremonials or the President's office, universities have very high protocol around high level meetings, around their ceremonials. So again, when we talk about the importance of these meetings, I do want you to kind of level set with yourself as you're listening into what applies to you. Now, diplomatic procedures, and I'm sure that everybody's heard this over and over again today, are the formal processes and practices that guide diplomatic engagements. On the other hand, protocol is the set of established rules and customs that underpin these procedures and ensure that diplomatic interactions are structured and respectful. And understanding and effectively implementing protocol is fundamental to diplomatic success. And it does set the stage for diplomacy. It does foster an environment of trust and respect among nations, cities, or even within organizations. So today I'd like to explore different types of high-level meetings. I'd like to help you talk through the understanding of preparations that are needed for successful diplomatic and official engagements. We'll talk a little bit about, again, the role of protocol officers, and we'll look at the impact of technology as we go through this. Now, diplomacy and protocol are not just limited to a single nation or a region. They really are global endeavors. And I heard this earlier. We are a very interconnected world. We're not there. We're not islands onto our own, and so it is so important to communicate effectively. Effective diplomacy is so important, and of course, with everything that's going on right now, the role of diplomacy is fundamental. And so the role that protocol plays is very important to make sure that these types of diplomatic official engagements run smoothly. So, um, it really is about human interactions. Protocol allows for the interactions to be structured, respectful, and conducive to collaboration and to negotiations that will hopefully provide results. So, in the world of international relations overall, protocol does serve as a bridge, and it cannot be understated enough that it connects people, leaders, connects diplomats, and those diplomats can be, again, at the ambassador levels, at the level of consuls general, but we also have diplomats in the form of people who represent international relations for their organizations. So I use the word diplomacy, diplomatic, in a way that I do want you to kind of to also think more broadly, especially if you are not representing a kind of diplomatic government setting. It's the cornerstone um, of official etiquette, and it plays a pivotal role in the success of high-level meetings. So what I'd like to do is let's look at some of the high-level meetings that we talk about. So of course the word meeting is, coming together, and so that may be what your interpretation of a word meeting is. But of course, in the world of protocol, meeting has many context, many variations, and so uh, when you're looking at high level meetings, very often they have different purposes. What is the purpose of coming together, especially in international diplomacy? And being able to understand the different types of meetings that you have will help you also have more successful planning and execution of your event. So you have summits. And so summits are very often held at the most prominent high level and I would say summits are most probably your highest level meeting. And they bring together heads of state and government from multiple nations, sometimes to discuss critical issues. Examples of that would be the G7, the G20, climate change summits. So these meetings focus on formal negotiations. And I'm now going to switch to meetings that cover negotiations and treaties. And so those types of meetings are going to usually lead to an agreement or a legally binding document that will come out of them. And so sometimes they are very important in terms of negotiations and treaties for resolving international disputes. Official visits. Now, what is very often when a head of state travels to another country on official business, and these are opportunities to connect the countries, strengthen bilateral relations, to discuss mutual interests. So that is, again, another form of meeting. We have international conferences like this, like the one we're all attending today. And it brings together representatives from different countries. And again, I want to take a step back. We have international conferences that may be representatives, and I'm going to give you an example. You got for instance, the UNESCO Creative Cities Network, where you have representatives of local government or cities who come to represent their creative industries. Some come with their elected officials, some don't, but those gatherings are really important where they can talk about issues that are of common interest to them. Another form of looking at meetings could be receptions, diplomatic receptions. And receptions tend to be a little bit less formal. You don't necessarily have people sitting at a table, but receptions are again opportunities for building relationships and networking. Um, and then, of course, you have to take into consideration that depending on what the meeting entails, you have different challenges, you have different requirements. And so every setting requires kind of following your own criteria and processes, which are what we refer to as our procedural protocol. And so regardless of the type, protocol plays a critical role in preparing for these types of meetings. And it really, by using protocol correctly, you're able to address how you invite people, what order you have for people speaking, where people sit, or if there is seating, where are you going to have this event? So all these different aspects. Something, of course, that's also incredibly important in protocol, especially when we talk about international protocol, are the cultural considerations and making sure that we are being culturally sensitive to the needs of everyone who is in the meeting. Of course, there's other things that are important when we're talking about meetings, and it's about the logistics. And a big part of protocol and the work of protocol is the work with logistics. And it's I think protocol is one of the fields where detail, it's all in the details, right? Every little detail counts. And when we're talking about logistics for meetings, there is no detail that is too small, because if you miss something, and it could be the smallest thing, it could actually have an impact on how things go. The other thing is security, depending on the level of the meeting, you may have to take into consideration all the security needs for the venue. Uh, One of the things that I would say is really, really important is that you have to be, and I'm sure that anybody who is in the world of protocol and a protocol practitioner understands the need to be flexible and adaptable. So of course, as protocol professionals, we plan ahead, we have our roadmap, we're working on things, but sometimes things happen, unexpected outcomes, you know, emerge in a given situation. And so we have to make sure that as protocol professionals, we have the ability to pivot and adapt and make sure that we can resolve whatever we need to if it needs a solution. But that I know it sounds counterintuitive, but really flexibility and adaptability has to be one of our strongest strengths. If you as a person, if that's something you can't do very well, then the world of protocol could be a very difficult place for you. Um, so understanding the different types of meetings is the first step in really effectively engaging in an official setting, in a diplomatic setting. Also, again, applying it more broadly, right, into civil society. If you have a high-level business meeting where there's something very important is going to take place, it's 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 really important to plan carefully to make sure that you have successful outcomes. So, how do we prepare, or what should we be considering when we're planning high level meetings? So, of course, there's a process that we typically have to follow, and everybody within their own organizations will know should have a process. And we also need to know who our key partners and stakeholders are and what role everybody plays. So that's really important. So let me delve a little bit more deeply into this. Um, you know, um, when we're talking about preparing for these meetings, again, the devil is in the details. There's a lot of details. So planning can be complex, but at the same time, very important to make sure that you have successful outcomes. So one of the first things, of course, we talk about is the time that you need to plan for high level meetings. So the more time you have, obviously, the more lead time you have, it will allow you to plan accordingly. Now, we talk about, I often hear, well, why didn't you let me know when I have something coming up and I'll reach out to a partner and they'll say, well, why, if you had only given me a few more months lead time. And very often my response is actually, I don't have a few months. Very often I am getting requests that may need me to act very quickly. And sometimes it's a month or 2 months. I personally had never really had much of the luxury of being able to plan for years in advance. I will tell you, the only time where I was able to plan for 4 years in advance was when we were celebrating our tricentennial. And I've talked about 300 years in the United States for a city is a long time. And we were celebrating our tricentennial. And leading up to the tricentennial, we knew this was going to be an important year. And it was a year to engage our international partners, our sister cities, but also to engage the governments that played a role historically in the growth of our city, especially Spain and Mexico. And so we started planning 4 years before for that whole event and everything that went on. But again, that was kind of a one-time, unusual setting in my world. usually I'm dealing with kind of shorter lead times. So again, being able to have time to plan is important, and is something that you obviously want to be able to take into consideration. Last minute, always, if you're doing things at the last minute without having planned beforehand, you inevitably could run into problems. Something also that's very important to me is partnership, working with partners, stakeholders. It could be intergovernment agencies. Very important. You've got to know the who's who. So, as a protocol professional, again, obviously you work within your institution and you know people within your institution. Hopefully, you know the different departments that may be out there, your resources within your organization. But it is equally important to know people outside your organization and to know the different agencies that you need to connect with. And uh, this is my a moment where I'll say to you, when you are in the position of protocol, it is really vital that you are strengthening and developing your network professionally. You get to know people, you know who is where and what they do, because you never know when you're going to need their help or assistance. And so cultivating those relationships, being careful about making sure you know and you keep, for instance, your contact list strong, uh, because again, I will repeat, you never know when you need the help. And so again, depending on your context, if you're working at the national government level, at the local government level, within civil society, very often when you are involved in a high level meeting, you're going to need to pull in different groups, different people, and that a big part of your success is going to be able to collaborate. So collaboration is very important. Again, I say this because I could not do the work that I do in our city, in our municipality, if I did not know how to work within our municipality with different departments, but also within our civil society. I work with, let's say, for instance, chambers of commerce or economic development organizations, or I work with universities, I work with cultural nonprofit organizations. And it makes such a difference to be able to just write an email, pick up the phone, and reach out to someone and be able to facilitate some of the things that you need to facilitate, that if you didn't know the person, you would have to, it would take you so much longer to get to that point. So again, the importance of partnerships, that for me is crucial in my work, is those partnerships. Now, knowing you're having good objectives, knowing what the purpose of your meeting is also very important. When with my team, when we have delegations come, typically our delegations are coming from other cities. We have sister cities around the world, so to be sister city delegations, we put together a program for them. As part of the program, we're going to have, we'll always have the top high level meeting, but then there's the whole program of their visit, and it's all important. And so really understanding, okay, what is the purpose? Why are they coming? And what are we doing? And what are we trying to achieve? So this is something that you need to think about. Also, again, in my line of work, it's really important I understand and know who the diplomatic partners are, who is the correct channel for communication. So if I'm working with a Japanese delegation, I may to, and it may behove me to reach out to the Japanese consulate for our region here in Texas in the United States, alert them about the visit, potentially even invite the head of the mission to be a part of our event, but making sure that you always are thinking, right, when you're working on the diplomatic level, of all of those scenarios and who needs to be involved is very important. Next thing you must think about is the venue. Again, some of the meetings could take place in very different settings. So choosing the venue carefully is important. It will help you to secure and have a good environment that is conducive for discussions. Again, as I mentioned earlier, security is a top priority, and you want to make sure your high level participants are protected. And again, for instance, when we have had state level visits, a head of state who's come to San Antonio, typically, for instance, in the United States, the Secret Service is assigned and they come and they help provide protection. The head of state comes with their own security and protection. So again, that becomes a part of the work. You making sure that you're connected with all the right people, and everybody is also communicating. So again, never underestimate the time that you need to again be connected on the security. You as a protocol officer are not necessarily in charge of security, but security is a top priority. So you just need to make sure that all of the measures are in place and people are connected. Also, on the logistical side, you want to be able to think about, and this is really the kind of the details, right? Transportation that may be needed, accommodation, and catering or translation services. What do you need on that table if you are using a table? And this is where, of course, you as a protocol professional play a pivotal role, and you make sure that every detail, if that goes into your planning, is culturally sensitive and follows diplomatic etiquette. Now, the issue, another thing that you need to think about is, depending on your meeting, do you need to send out invitations? Do you need to manage an RSVP list to know who's going to be in the room? Again, this depends what your event is, and it could be a very small group, it could be a larger group. So again, knowing and understanding what you need. Um, and then again, remember that, for instance, in a room where you're going to be seating, you may need to have table tents with names of the participants, and you may want to have the names of the participants facing outwards towards the others, so they know who they are talking to, who is in the room with them. So again, things that you have to think about for the meeting, but also leading up to the meeting. That's why it's so important you know who is in the room, so that you are able to capture their names ahead of time. I know that very invariably we have either someone drops out last minute, or you get an add-on. And again, some meetings, they wouldn't be an add-on, wouldn't be able to come in. But sometimes it kind of at our level, if somebody, an unexpected visitor is part of delegation, we tend to have name tents that don't have a name, and then we'll just have to write it on with a Sharpie. So you have to be flexible, you have to be prepared in case you have those unanticipated participants. Um, Again, having a structured agenda that allows for people to follow a run of show in terms of what they're going to talk about, who's going to start first, is also an important part of your planning. Um, and then something else to think about, and this would be, you would be working with the communications team, is potentially, does there need to be a communication strategy? And sometimes these types of meetings may elicit the interest of members of the press. And so, how do you want to handle media and the press overall? So these are things that sometimes you need to take into consideration. Again, as a protocol officer, maybe you're not the one who is organizing the media strategy, but you need to know who to work with to make sure that that is being handled, especially if the meeting is sensitive, or if it's expected to have some kind of outcome that's going to make the news. You want to be prepared. Be prepared with your statement to make sure that the information you're putting out is consistent with what you want to be to have publicly known. Um, so again, um, I always talk about rehearsals. Um, and it's not possible to always have rehearsals, simulations. But very often for very high level meetings, again, if at the national level, if a head of state comes to our city, usually we will have been received visits by protocol teams, advanced teams, not just once, it could be twice, three times. I remember when Their Majesties, the King and Queen of Spain, came to San Antonio for our tricentennial. They We had four advance visits by their team, and each advanced visit was very much repetition, repetition, what we were going to do, and it was going to all the places that we were going to go with them. And of course, that's at the very at that is at this level. But again, when you're talking about maybe your average meeting, making sure that you're going through all those scenarios, if you can, is important, so that you have an understanding of what to expect. But as part of that, you also have to be prepared if something happens, if there's an unexpected crisis. And what would you do if suddenly you had a medical emergency, um, or if there was some kind of security issue? So sometimes, again, depending on the meeting and depending on the level of the people who are attending, you also need to consider that kind of crisis management plan. I have to say, when I was watching the royal funeral in the UK, I was here, obviously in Texas, watching it. Um, Watching also later on the coronation, I could not. I just kept going. I'd watch it all, and I kept thinking in the back of my mind, all the work that goes on behind the scenes, all the people who are involved in the protocol side of this. I mean, there's so much detail, so much planning that's going into all of this. I mean, they must have had an army of practitioners, but when you thought about all of the people who descended onto London, and you thought about all of the security, and at any moment something could have gone wrong. It didn't. It was amazing how they staged these very large scale events with so many people attending, and yet things moved forward. So it really, again, I don't know if that happened to you uh, watching these very important historic events. If your protocol side kicks in, you start to analyze and look at, what it actually takes to put something on. It looks so easy, and it is not. Uh, as part of preparation for meetings, I think briefing people ahead of time is very important, and briefing your principals is crucial. So you have to have briefing materials. You need to prepare, um, at the minimum, to have a sense of some speaking points that you would want to have your principals should be bringing up into the meeting. Uh, Again, I kind of bringing back to the work that I do when we have visitors, high level visitors who come in and they have a meeting with the mayor. Typically, we will prepare a short brief. We include bios of the people who are visiting. We will give a kind of a short background of the country that they represent. We then give a little bit, maybe if it's relevant, some history in terms of what has happened in the past between our that country, the city in that country, and our city. So there's some history, some context of past, making sure that those speaking points are there. And then, if possible, again, what is the meeting? What is the purpose of the meeting? What do they want to achieve? So it may be just a courtesy meeting to have an introduction, but it could be a more serious meeting where let's say an ambassador from a foreign country based in Washington, D.C. is visiting, but they want to come in and they want to not only meet the mayor, but they want to also discuss a sensitive item that has to do with maybe their consulate in the region, or something that affects their citizens. So again, knowing beforehand, and this is really important for us as protocol professionals, what's going to come up, what expectations do we set? Very, very important. um, I will say to you that one of the things that I do, we talk about planning for a meeting, and of course, with my team, we meet when we're leading up to important events and meetings. We meet all the time. We have plans of runs of show, extensive, who is got to be where, what is our backup. Um, but one of the things that I think is equally important is after the event has passed, that you have an evaluation afterwards. You know what? First of all, congratulations, what went well, right? You always want to start with that positive reinforcement, but also communicate with the team. What could we have done better? Is there some room for improvement? And believe me, we are never perfect. None of us are. And there's always something that could have been done better. There was something that maybe we missed, or there was a little detail. So going back and kind of just understanding what those are and being able to take them on board, so that the next time that is something that we take into consideration. So preparation is the foundation of success in these high level meetings. And it requires a lot of planning and coordination and attention to detail. Again, if you plan correctly and adequately and do what you need to do, you're hopefully going to have a successful outcome. So the protocol officers play such an important role in all of this work. And I think that protocol officers are the unsung heroes at times, because behind the scenes, discreet, just making sure that everything is in place for what is actually the substance of the meeting to take place. So we often say protocol is a cornerstone of these diplomatic interactions. And by adhering to these principles, the diplomats, the officials in the room can create an atmosphere of respect, of professionalism that leads to effective negotiations, relationship building, conflict resolution in a world of high level diplomacy. Something to consider when you are looking at venues for your event, and I think that's again an important topic, is it just any venue? Sometimes, depending on the level of the meeting, the choice of a venue communicates a particular message or sets a tone. And so that is something to consider, right? You want to make sure that the venue you choose, again, allows for your security needs. It allows for neutrality that may be necessary for negotiation, especially if there is a difficult situation, the conflict, that you have the capacity in terms of size for the venue to accommodate all of your attendees, that it is accessible, it is convenient for people to travel to, and that your technology needs are also met. Again, nowadays, just the technology that we use in meetings, whether we realize it or not, is so much greater than it was 100 years ago or 50 years ago. And so we have to make sure that we have what we need for our meetings, and that is kind of part of your planning. But also, sometimes the venues you choose may have a cultural significance. I'll give you a great example there. Again, I'm going to go back to the story of the visit of their Majesties. When they arrived, their first activity, this was like the most important meeting because it was a meeting where they were meeting the mayor and our county judge, and where was this meeting going to take place? So with the advance team, we'd looked at various venues, and we finally settled on this very old, modest colonial building that had been developed as part of, it was part of the fort, a military fort, and this had been where the commander's house had been. And we actually called it the Spanish governor's palace. It's not a palace, but that's what it was called. And today this very modest structure right behind our beautiful city hall. It is a museum, but it has, when you go into the building, it has this colonial feel about it, and you go out into the patio, into the outside, and you feel like you're in a part of Spain or Mexico. Well, the advance team chose that location. They felt that just the setting, and when they were taking video, doing the video transmission of the meeting between the mayor and their majesties, that conveyed to the audience back in Spain, that connection that San Antonio had with the history of Spain. So again, those little details, very, very important. Um, I'm coming to the end of my time, so I'm kind of going to rush through this a little bit.
You've
Seating,
literally got a few minutes to
yeah.
come to the end of your time. So, okay, yeah,
So one thing
thanks.
that's important that you are also planning in your for your meeting is seating. How are your principals going to be seated in a room? What type of if you are actually at a meeting and a table, are you going to have flags in the room? Are you going to have a gift exchange? Are you going to have photographs? So very, very important to plan your seating, to plan the room in such a way that you can kind of make sure you hit all your points. In planning your run of show, again, it's very often, if you're in a more public meeting, it may be a question of speeches and toasts. And again, planning who starts, what is the order of precedence, who are the guests of honor, making sure that language is met, the importance of interpreters in the room, very, very important. And then again, the order of speeches may seem sometimes like a formality, but it really is important in diplomatic protocol. And if you do it correctly, again, I'm repeating, it creates that atmosphere of respect, professionalism, and diplomatic communication. I'm going to kind of close with that importance of gift exchange, because I think gift exchange is something you need to plan for. I think it's pretty obvious that when you bring the parties to the table, it is a long-standing tradition to present gifts and exchange gifts, and it's about reciprocity as well. So again, when you're choosing the gifts for that exchange, you want to make sure that it is meeting requirements of cultural sensitivity, value, it doesn't have to be an expensive gift. And again, do your research with the country that you're involved with, the symbolism of the gift, and how the gift is presented. All of those are very, very important to take into consideration in your planning. And then, of course, you have those larger scale gifts, those big official gifts that are given and become monuments in your city somewhere. I give an example. I was looking on the internet of kind of an iconic gift in the United States was, for instance, the Statue of Liberty when it was given by France. to the United States. And to this day, it's a testament to the Franco-American friendship. And it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So again, something to take into consideration. And finally, in closing, communication. Communication is so important, so vital with your team, with the people that you're working with your partners. Constant communication and it could be again in all the different modalities. I know that I'm running out of time, so I'm going to stop there. Patricia, thank you very much.